To introduce our speaker for this evening, Dr. Bill Thierfelder. Dr. Thierfelder has an extremely interesting list of experiences and accomplishments. As an athlete, he was a high jumper and a member of the U.S. Olympic team. He also served as a Division I coach, and he's represented and worked with over 100 Olympic and professional athletes as the executive director of the Player Management Group. As an academic, Dr. Thierfelder obtained a PhD in sports psychology and human movement from Boston University. He's also a licensed psychologist and a diplomat of the American Board of Psychological Specialties. As a business leader, he was an executive at the York Barbell Company, and he was a principal at the Joyner Sports Medical Institute, which is a physical therapy corporation. And finally, but certainly not least, he's also a husband to his wife Mary and father to 10 children who range in age, I knew that'd get applause, from age 6 to 24. But perhaps most relevantly for tonight, he is the president of Belmont Abbey College in North Carolina, where he's been since 2004. Belmont Abbey College was founded by the Benedictine monks, and it is a Catholic liberal arts college and is proudly listed as one of the 20 colleges recommended by the Catholic Newman Society for its strict adherence to Catholic values. Please help me welcome Dr. Thierfelder.
Well, good evening, everybody. How are you? I often start by saying, they could have said, you walked on the moon. And everybody's like, yeah, okay, walked on the moon. And then you get to, and he has 10 children. Oh, the whole place like, oh, there's breaths taken, So my wife should be here speaking to you. She's the one who's a saint, but she sent me out, so you got me. I will start by saying that, God uses the most inadequate instruments to accomplish His will, so there'll be no mistaking His will. And that has been my life. He has put me in places I have no business being, and I think it's just so He can show, hey, it couldn't have been that guy, it must be something else going on. So hopefully we attribute it to grace in some way. And I hear you're president of Belmont Abbey College. I feel like looking around saying, where is that guy? When I went to the University of Maryland, just to kind of give it context, they told me my major was eligibility. Okay, so, and I won't go through the whole story, but it was certainly a call to come to Belmont Abbey College. I had no intent of ever being in higher education, but literally, someday I'll tell you the story. You talk about divine providence, things happening to you in a very short period of time that lead you someplace, and it becomes very clear it's what you're supposed to be doing, so you say, okay, yes, I'll do it. Belmont Abbey, just to very quickly give you a little sense of that place, it was founded in 1876. It's an unusual place in that at the founding, there was only about 700 Catholics in the whole state of North Carolina. Most of them were not even in the Charlotte area. The few scattered Catholics that were there were Irish immigrants who had come to work a gold mine that was actually in Charlotte at the time. And Father Jeremiah O'Connell saw that this land, he was a Catholic priest, he saw that this land, about 700 acres, was being auctioned off for back taxes, and so he put a bid in on it. He lost, but shortly after they came back to him and said, the guy who won can't pay, you still interested? He said yes, and he put down his $10, and he bought the 700 acres. Yeah, it was a good investment then, Now, God in His good sense of humor, I guess, Father tries to give it to the Jesuits, Redemptorists, and a host of others. They all said, no, why would we go to North Carolina? There's no Catholics, how would we support ourselves? So it seems like He can't give the land away. So God, again, in His good sense of humor, I guess, gives it to these German-speaking monks who have come from Bavaria that are up in Pennsylvania. They end up saying yes. They send down one monk, and I don't know how this happens in admissions, but as he passes through Richmond, he picks up 2 students. They arrive on the property April 21st, 1876, and they start class the day they arrive. There's nothing on this property but 2 shacks with holes in the roof. This is the beginning of Belmont Abbey College. The buildings that are there now, if you haven't seen them, are beautiful brick Gothic buildings. Those monks literally dug up the red clay, they formed them into bricks, they dried them in the sun, they designed the buildings, and they actually built all those buildings over 130 years ago. So divine providence is no stranger to Belmont Abbey College, and so it should be no surprise as to how I would find my way there, because Our Lady, Mary Help of Christians, who is the patroness of the college, has been at work, I think, from the very beginning. We have also undertaken, I guess, 3 I'll just pick out 3 things for you that stand out. We were, and this is how, again, God just is amazing how He works. We were the first to sue the federal government over the HHS mandate in protection of our religious liberty. Yeah, but go figure that one out. Belmont Abbey College, this little tiny place down in Charlotte, North Carolina. We're the ones who sue the federal government. I think God did it to embarrass everybody else into it. Like what are you doing? If this place is doing that, why don't you jump in here? And it was really Abbott Placid and I in our discussion, but it was his leadership that said, he came up to me one day because we'd been dealing with the EOC over an issue that related much to this, and he said, I think we just need to sue the federal government right now. I said, okay, let's go. So went to the board and we got approval and we ended up moving forward with that. The other that I just instituted about, I guess maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, we made an announcement. For those that are in business, you might have an interest in this. I came from the private sector and I looked at higher education finance and just said, who created this? It makes absolutely no sense to me because basically nonprofit colleges run on an operating deficit and it's completely normal. So what you have is your revenue from your tuition and then you have your costs. And there's some gap between those two, and then you basically go out, you fundraise in order to cover this gap, and if you are fortunate enough to raise the money, you then say, oh, we broke even. I'm thinking, what business does that? I mean, think of our own lives. You get a paycheck. You don't spend your paycheck in the first 3 weeks of the month, and then the last week go around the neighborhood with your hat out and say, oh, hey, I need some help, to get through the rest of the month. And by the way, I'll be back next month, and the month after that, and the month after that. And, there's something not quite right with that model. And so I actually moved us towards what I'm calling, no connection to the Affordable Healthcare Plan, but the Affordable Private College model, which was to do just that, is to operate the college on tuition alone. And to do it by actually reducing administration. Every college is saying they can't do this. Meanwhile, they're spending 2/3 of all that they spend on their academic and general administration. Only about 1/3 is being spent on instruction. Again, there's something wrong with that. At its most rudimentary level, a college is about bringing somebody that wisdom, knowledge, and experience together with someone who is seeking them. I mean, that's what we're supposed to be doing. Everything else is just there to facilitate that process. And so if it's not doing that, there's a problem and we need to change it. I also lowered our tuition 33% last year in order to make it more affordable for students. My long-term goal, though, is to have a very large endowment. But I'll tell you why. I don't want to accept any state or federal aid on behalf of our students anymore. I want to get out of that mode completely. And finally, the thing I guess that brought me here tonight is sport and virtue, which is probably an odd thing, in a way. I bet you don't have a lot of speakers talk to you about sports. But I've been put in this, I guess, unique position that I've been in sports medicine, sports law, sports business. I've been a coach. I've competed. I mean, I have a pretty good perspective of what the sports world is about, and often we don't think about the impact of it. I mean, it's trillions of dollars. I mean, you look at the economics, the politics. I mean, it's incredible what sport is involved with in terms of our lives, and we just sort of accept that it's there. But we think of it sometimes, I think, as a kind of a timeout from life in some way. And I've encountered maybe 2 ways of looking at sport, certainly within the Catholic world. Either I get those that say, yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff in there, and I don't like the cursing, and I don't like this behavior, and I don't like this stuff, but what are you going to do about it? It's just the way it is, so I guess we just have to kind of go along with it. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have those that say, I'm just disgusted with the whole thing, I don't want anything to do with sport, I don't even want to watch it, I don't want to deal with it, and so I'm not going to even look at it. And I'm making a case that neither one of those is a tenable position. We need to take back sport and make it what it was intended to be, which really is a means for developing virtue, and I'm going to maybe just talk about that a little bit. One of the problems has been that professional sport, which I worked in for many, many years, has really become kind of the poster child for vice. Now, let me premise this by saying I've worked with hundreds of professional athletes who are incredibly great people. You'd love to have them as friends. I mean, just wonderful, and mostly NFL players I've worked with in the last 15 years. Good men, good husbands, good fathers. I mean, just good Christians. I mean, whatever their faith may be, fantastic, good people. However, what gets portrayed in the media and other places, for example, you go to ESPN, 9 out of 10 stories are all dismal problems with somebody being shot, somebody doing something bad of some kind. And basically, you have Pride, anger, lust, sloth, envy, gluttony, greed. I mean, it's all there on display. But I'm saying it doesn't have to be that way. And most recently, the most pressing thing that just came out in the news was, Donald Sterling with the LA Clippers and that whole controversy. And I don't know about you, I maybe have a different view on it. Obviously, it was wrong, completely wrong. But what's interesting to me is that why that, and why now, and why only this? And as if he is the only person out there doing this one thing that was terribly, horrifically wrong, the NBA? I mean, the debauchery going on in the NBA is beyond comprehension. And we're outraged over this, and I'll tell you what I really think it is. When the league gets threatened, when the league has the potential to be financially damaged, now we're going to take action. Now we're outraged. Now we're going to do something about it. And it was the wrong reason for doing it. They should have done something about this 20 years ago if they're going to do something about it, because this has been going on for a long time. And he's not the only one. Marge Schott with the Cincinnati Reds, it was the same kind of situation. That had been going on for a long time, and it finally got to a point where the league was being damaged and they just had to do something about it. That's to me the wrong motivation for why you would do the right thing. My approach to working with athletes all my life has been, like now, Saint, I almost can't say his name because I'm used to saying, John Paul II, Pope John Paul II, Saint Pope John Paul II, which is a wonder and a joy that he has been made a saint. But it was in terms of looking at each person as a whole person, body, mind, and spirit. And sometimes when I say that, people think, well, what do you mean? Like the NFL, like where they all kneel down after the game and say a prayer? And you know what? That's great. I'm really happy they kneel down and say a prayer after the game. But if during the game I am cursing at you, spitting on you, trying to poke your eyes out, trying to take your knee out during the course of the game, which is what goes on very often in the middle of the tackles that are going on, there's a disconnect for me that we're going to kneel down and pray at the end. So let me give you an idea, an example of how I see applying this body, mind, and spirit thing all at the same moment. I worked with a lot of wide receivers. And I was working with an NFL wide receiver, and we're out in this indoor facility by ourselves, and he's running, and you can see I'm tall, I got long arms, I can throw the ball pretty fast. So he's running these out routes, I'm throwing him balls, and about the 8th one he drops a ball. And when he drops the ball, he says, the F-bomb comes out of him, okay? I mean, really loud. And I look at him, I said, what did you say? And he kind of looks at me a little sheepishly, he goes, well, I dropped the ball. I said, I know you dropped the ball, but I said, what did you say? And he goes, I dropped the ball. I said, thank you, Jesus, right? He looks at me like I hit him over the head with a 2x4, and he said, well, why am I thanking Jesus? I said, I knew he was Christian. I said, 1 Thessalonians 5:18, we're thankful in all things. I said, aren't you thankful in all things? He goes, yeah. I said, so thank you, Jesus, right? He goes, thank you, Jesus? I go, good, now come on back. Now wait, you may think, well, what, you just try to say something nice? I'm going to give you 2 reasons for saying it. The first one is the virtue of gratitude. It's the right thing to do. We are supposed to be thankful in all things. Bang your head, thank you, Jesus. Win the lottery, thank you, Jesus. We're thankful in all things, okay? Not just in the good things. Second thing is purely pragmatic and purely sports performance. This guy's an NFL wide receiver. If he drops a ball, it's not because he can't catch. He dropped the ball for a reason. But while he's over there cursing and kicking the ground and stomping around because he dropped the ball, what doesn't he know? Why he dropped the ball. Which means he's going to come back and not have a clue why he dropped the ball, which means he's probably going to drop another one for maybe the same exact reason. And the reason, by the way, he's kicking the ground and cursing, maybe not surprise this group, but for most people it does, it's called pride. He's got to show me I'm much better than this. I don't drop balls. I got to show you how upset I am if I drop the ball, because I just don't drop balls, So I said, come on back. I said, so tell me what happened. Of course, it's a blackout. He has no idea what happened. Now, I'm going to look like I have a nervous tick, but I'm going to show you what he didn't do, okay? When you're an NFL wide receiver, and you're going in and you're going to plant, I'll face you and show it to you so everybody can see it. I'm going to show you how fast you can turn your head. That's how fast you can turn your head, okay? Now, if you're an NFL wide receiver and you come in and you plant and you sweep your vision around, first of all, everything blurs for the whole time that you've swept around, plus it took you some amount of time to get your head around, that's the quarterback, okay? On the other hand, if on my impulse cut, I snap my head back, I've just seen a ball probably 10 yards sooner. He didn't do that, though. He swept his head around, but by the way, because he got mad and cursed and he had no idea what had happened. So I tell him, okay? So then he goes back, he's running some more routes, and about the 9th or 10th ball, believe it or not, he drops another ball. This time, he's about to say the word, I can see it. And he kind of looks back at me, and I go, and he says, "Thank you, Jesus?" I said, "Good, now come on back." Okay? So he comes back, and I said, "Tell me what happened." And he goes, I didn't get my head around that one. I said, "Perfect," because it was true. He didn't get his head around. He didn't have an impulse gut, his head didn't come around. I said, "Perfect." He goes, "Okay," so he comes back. By the end of the day, first of all, this guy is hardly dropping a ball. He's making catches that could be on highlight film. And when he does drop a ball, though, he is saying, "Thank you, Jesus," like, "Thank you, Jesus," like he means it. And he's coming back. Now, here's my point. In that workout, he became a better person. He became a better wide receiver, physically and mentally, and spiritually he was doing the right thing. So it's an example where these things do not have to be separated. And too often I've seen it that when I talk about sport and virtue, people are thinking, oh, there's a choice to be made. Either we're going to have kind of really kind of goody two-shoes kind of person over here, or we're going to have a really good athlete over here. As if somehow the two can't exist together. I was talking to the NFL Players Association one year, and I looked at them all and I said, how many of you are trying to perfect the intellectual virtue of art? Yeah, they're looking at me like you are now, like, what? Okay, they thought I'd come into the wrong building, I think, So I said, so how many of you are trying to perfect yourselves as football players? Whole room raises their hand. I said, that is the intellectual virtue of art. It's the right method of external production. If you're trying to perfect whatever you're doing, whatever it is, whether it's a football player, a carpenter, or anything else, that's that one virtue, but it's only one of them. And virtues don't live in isolation, they work together. So it led me to write this book, reluctantly. I had no intent of writing a book. I had no time to write a book. Matter of fact, I have prayed for the gift of bilocation, but God has not deemed me worthy of that at this point, or he just thinks I'm a sloth of some kind, and I'm just complaining, and I really have plenty of time, and I'm just not using it well. But my life seems busy. Between the 10 children and the college, life is full. And so I had no intent of writing this book, but I had been doing podcasts for about 5 or 6 years, and this group kept coming to me to ask me to write this book, and I said, I really don't have time. They said, now you've done this podcast. What if we got a writer, and they would listen to your podcast, and they would sort of write this up, and then all you got to do is look at it. So, I don't have, they said, and this could benefit the college. I said, how? And they said, everything from this book, if you want, could go to the college. I said, okay, I'll do it, right? Of course, they bring me back the first chapter from this person who was going to write this book for me. I was like, oh my gosh, no. It was unbelievably bad. There was no, and I'm not claiming to be any kind of author or writer, but trust me, this was, if anything, it gave me hope that I could write, after reading this. And I just said, oh my God, it came to me, I'm going to have to write the book. But I will tell you, it was a family affair. Everybody was involved. I'd ask them about the stories I was putting in there. What do you think about this? Can I put that in? Everybody's giving me their input. So what I thought I'd share with you is basically just very quickly a few brief pieces from the book in the different sections. And I broke it down to 3 parts. The first one was preparing the mind to win. And what I tried to do in this little section, it's about 5 chapters, lots of stories. I tried to do this in a way that would be hopefully entertaining and readable by everybody. But the reason I put this chapter in is that over my course of my life, I have come across certain psychological things that get in everybody's way when it comes to performing at a high level. These are the top ones that always impact somebody, and it's usually to degree. It's not a matter of do they, it's just how much do they. The second section was making peak performance a common occurrence. And I wanted the book to be real too, not just nice thoughts, but practically. How do you actually make a peak performance happen, and then can you repeat it? Because that's usually the problem with peak performances, by the way. If anybody's ever gone out maybe to a golf course and you've hit a drive that just went down the middle of the fairway, it went far, it went long, it was perfect. You feel like staying there forever looking at it, okay? You just don't know when that's ever going to come back, And so, the next tee, you're envisioning it's going to come and, you're into the woods. But I'm going to share a couple things with you. But that's what the book does, is show you specifically how do you do this. Because there are ways that this really does happen. The last section was playing with a passion that never ends. And what I tried to do there in that title was not scare people off with stuff that was too deep, but it's deep. The last part of the book is really about sacrifice, it's about purpose, it's about why you're doing what you're doing, and what enables you to perform at a high level and to sacrifice and so forth in life. And so if you bear with me, I figured I'd share a couple of these with you just to give you a sense of what it was about. The first thing, this first chapter was called All Work and No Play, and I don't know about you, it's phenomenal to me. It's a phenomenon. Every human being from the beginning of time has played. Everybody has played. You probably all still do play to some degree. That's kind of an amazing thought. You can't say that about a lot of things. Everybody plays, and you got to ask yourself, why would everybody play? Like, what is that? And by the way, sport, we try to separate that away as if that's not play. Sport is one form of play. It's play. Okay? We all do it. And it's important because it's all throughout our, if you look at literature, you look at the greatest minds, the greatest things that have been written and thought, they've talked about play. St. Augustine said, I played ball games. St. Augustine played ball games? I mean, I don't think St. Augustine played ball games. I mean, St. Francis de Sales talked about this. I mean, Plato talked about this. Socrates, Aristotle, they all talked about play. It's kind of phenomenal. Sacred scripture, wisdom played before God in Proverbs 8. I was God's delight day after day, playing before God all the time. Playing in the world, in God's earth, my delight was with humankind. So even in Scripture, God's talking about play. There must be something important about this thing called play. And really what it is that play is like wisdom. It's actually contemplation of the highest things. It's done for its own sake, like wisdom. And the problem becomes, if you're not doing it that way, play can cease to be play and be transformed into actually a selfish work. And that is unfortunately some of what we see today. We label it as play, it's really no longer play. I'd also say to you that play and sport are, again, we see it sometimes as a timeout from life. And I'm sure many people in this room have traveled, and maybe you've been to Rome, and maybe you've been in St. Peter's Basilica, or you've gone to the Vatican Museum, or you've traveled to some other holy shrines or sites or cathedrals, maybe St. Patrick's in New York. What is so great about those? They lift our eyes up. I mean, you walk in, you're kind of in awe of these things, and they make you think about God. They lift our eyes up. Sport has the same potential. It has the same ability to do this that for all of us. I don't know if any of you watched the 2012 London Olympics. There was a guy by the name of David Rhodesia who ran the half mile. And he broke the world record. He ran from the beginning of that race, he took the lead, and he finished in the lead. And he ran the half mile in 1 minute and 40 seconds. And I am telling you, if you would just pause and watch that, and not just say, hey, okay, show me another race, but just watch that race, watch this guy run, you're going to thank God. You're going to say, this person was made in the image and likeness of God. This is awesome what God has done, that He has made us to be able to do these kinds of things. And so sport, this play, has the ability to draw us in and actually make us think about God in some ways. And, you know, we are so wired to play that we will even pay to watch other people do it. No, that's a bizarre idea, isn't it? We love play so much that if we can't play, we're going to pay to watch somebody else do it. And I want a good seat, you know? I want to see what's really going on in there. There's something about that, you know, that you got to ask yourself. One of the psychological things that I found is pervasive. I've asked many people, many athletes, you know, groups of people, what is the most motivating thing to any human being? And almost indefinitely I'll hear money will be shouted out. Then some people will say, you know, fame, you know, power, you know, those kind of the big three. And I say, no, it's none of those things. Most motivating thing to any human being is love. Oh my gosh, they say, a love talk. I thought I was hearing about sport talk, you know, that's a love talk. But it's true, and I'll prove it to you. If I gave you each $1 billion, and I'll make you president, I don't know if you want to be president, but I'll make you president. But the only stipulation to this is that you have to go live on a deserted island for the rest of your life. Anybody gonna take that deal? Now, there might be a few tired parents in the room who might take a couple of months on the island, but they're not gonna go there forever. Why? If money, power, and fame were truly the most motivating things, we'd take the deal. But they're not, of course. What's missing on the deserted island are people, and the potential for relationships, and the potential for love. That is what we'd be missing, and we don't want to miss it. And so very often we're using money, power, and fame to actually get the thing we want most, which is that love thing. Now, I'm going to just share this one thing. I won't go into this depth with anything else I'll do tonight, but I'm going to share this one thing with you because I find it so prevalent. Every athlete I've ever worked with, elite athlete, has this to some degree. It's just, again, it's a matter of degree. I'm going to take all of you here, because I'm sure some of this you'll relate to it as well. I'm going to take you, for no particular reason, I'm going to take you at 1 year old. At 1 year old, all you know is that mom and dad are perfect and they're the whole universe. That's all you know at one, okay? And I'm not saying it was this way. I'm just saying that if you don't get that mom and dad love you, and I'm not saying they didn't. I'm just saying if your perception is somehow you're not getting that love you feel like you need, you come to a conclusion. And at 1 year old, you're not talking. You're not having a big conversation about it, but the feeling is, it must be me. Because here's these perfect people who love me and could, love me and they're perfect, and if they're not, it must be me. And people adopt all kinds of strategies, but I'm going to give you the one that I find most often in elite performers, and that is we start to take things on. And when you take something on, you get a clap on the back. And when you get the clap on the back, you go, ooh, I like that. That's like that love thing. That feels really good. I like the clap on the back. Now I'm going to take you and just imagine when you first went to school. Nobody had a clue as to how you were going to do in school. And you go and you come home with your report card, and mom and dad look at it, and you have all D's on it. Ooh, all D's. Got a problem, obviously. So, they start to look to say, what's going on? Maybe you're not studying, but you're studying, okay? You're working. They talk to teachers and so forth. And everybody's trying to do what they can, and you come home with the next report card, all D's again. This is like serious, So we got tutors now coming in. You really are studying. You're not goofing off. You're really trying. You're trying hard. Teachers are working with you. You as parents, you're working. Everybody's doing everything they possibly can, and you come home with D's again. At some point, all somebody can say to you is, good job, keep trying. What else can they say? We'll try to figure out a better way, but that's where you are. But what if you came home the first time and you had all A's, maybe a B, all A's and B's on your report card? What happened? Oh, my son or daughter, the genius. Matter of fact, that's where those bumpers come from in the back of vans, my son or daughter, the honor student, or whatever that is. They're genius. Isn't this great? They're big clap on the back. Oh, this feels good. That's like that love thing, okay? Now, what if sometime not too distant from now you come home and you have all A's and B's? Oh, you got one C. You think nobody says anything to you about the C? Somebody goes, whoa, what happened here? You're not going to have to explain the C. Why? Because A's and B's have become expected. You're supposed to get A's and B's. Ooh. Wait a second. I was getting a big clap on the back for the A's and the B's, and now those are just acceptable. Well, that's not good. I'm not getting much of a clap on the back anymore now for my A's and B's. So, I'm very adaptable. I got a free hand. I'm going to juggle the school stuff, my free hand, and go over here and take on something new. So maybe I take on athletics. Again, nobody has a clue how you're going to do in athletics when you first go into it. But let's say you go out and you perform really well. What happens? Oh, you are fast. Man, did you see her move? That's incredible. Did you see how high you can jump? Big, gigantic claps on the back. This is great. This works well. Now, I don't know where coaches get the 110%. There is only 100%. There is no secret slice under a pie. There's only 100, and at some point, you will take on all these different things, and it uses up the whole 100%, and you don't have one left to put into anything new, to get a new clap on the back. And when you get to that point, you usually get a really bad feeling. It's going to be frustration, sadness, depression, anger, something. It's going to be a bad feeling. You're not going to like it. Because basically what has happened is being good enough has gotten tied to being loved. They have absolutely nothing to do with each other, but we've stuck them together. And it's where anxiety and pressure and worry, it's where they all come from. This good enough love thing, it's where it comes from. Now think about it. People say to me, well, I'm under a lot of pressure. Really? Hand me, let me take a look at it. Where is it? It doesn't exist. It's your perception of whatever you're dealing with that you're calling this pressure thing, but it's the way you're thinking about it. It doesn't concretely exist. We've created it for ourselves. And in another section, I talk about the power of words. Let's say we had an absolute rule. You have to have $1 in your pocket at all times, okay? Have to have $1 in your pocket at all times. And I tell you, you have 95 cents in your pocket right now. How do you feel? Most people will say to me, not too good. I don't have $1. I got to have $1. I only got 95 cents. So we go out and we work hard. We do everything we possibly can. We get a nickel, maybe even a dime. So now we're up to $1, $1.05. How do you think you feel? Most people say, oh, now I feel really good. I'll say to you, no, you don't. Can you? We just saw a recession. You can lose more than 10 cents. Okay, you can lose a lot. So would a nickel be enough? Would 10 cents be enough? Would $2 be enough? I mean, I don't know. Would $5 be enough? Would you ever have enough? And I'm sure in your own life and experiences, I've worked with many athletes. I had one athlete who was making $5 million a year. He was going to only make $4.5 million this next year. And he was like crying to me. I mean, he was telling me the hardship he was going to go through because he only had the 4.5 for this year. I'm trying to take this in, I mean, he's got like 5 houses, he's got like, a car, he's got everything. He's telling me, but you know what? Before we left take somebody making $30,000, $20,000. Everybody tends to live up to what they have. And so when you suddenly take something away, it does feel like a hardship to any one of us to some degree. And so before we kind of like laugh at somebody who can't get by on $4.5 million a year, we look at the principle. We all fall into that a little bit. And we all feel like we have this thing that we need, that we have to have. So when I say about words, think how often we use the have tos, the musts, the shoulds. For example, has anybody in here ever said, I have to go to work? Come on. Are you kidding me? There's 3 of us have said this. We've all said that. Is it true? It's not true. We don't have to go to work. People say, what do you mean I have to go to work? How am I going to live? How am I going to have food, clothing, shelter? I said, who says you have to have those things? Oh, well, what do you mean? I said, you could sit down on this floor and never move again. I mean, there's a consequence to every action. They may pick you up and take you away. But the point is you could sit here and never move again. You have that choice. So if you go to work, it's because actually you want to, because you want the things that work brings you, which is to have the kind of food, clothing, and shelter you'd like to have. So it's not a have to, it's a want to. But think about that. With hard stuff, we rarely ever say, I want to do it. Well, I have to go over to so-and-so's today, No, you don't. But try changing that around and saying, I want to go over to so-and-so. You're like, ooh, that's hard to say. Because I didn't really, was thinking, I don't really think I want to go over there. But if I'm going, I am choosing to go. So it must be something that I can do. Middle of the book, peak performance. I start in an odd way. It's called Walking on Water. It's from Matthew 14:22-33. And I said, St. Peter, I think, had one of the greatest peak performances of all time. He walked on water. I mean, that's pretty good. Now people say, oh, wait a second. That was a miracle. That was not a peak performance. But wait a second. Let's examine this for a second. Matter of fact, I'll just read this short. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, he said. Now let's look at this for a second. Peter's free will is fully intact. He can stay in the boat. He doesn't have to get out of the boat. He chooses to get out of the boat. And he's focused on Christ. He steps out of the boat, and he actually starts walking on the water. And if he just stayed focused on Christ, he would have reached him. But what did he do? He started paying attention to the wind and the waves and the tempest around him, and what happens? He starts to sink. And then he cries out, save me, Lord, and obviously Christ does. But the point here is that it's a story about peak performance. It's an insight into peak performance. If you remain focused in detail on what you're seeking, you will probably get there. When you lose sight and you stop focusing on where you're going and stop paying attention to the details, that is when you start to sink. That is when things start to fall apart. And peak performances, by the way, are happening all the time. You may have read about these yogis and lamas. Lamas up in Tibet there, and they can slow their heart rates and respiration down to practically nothing. Somebody says to me, well, I'm not going to go live on a mountain for 50 years, so, okay, those are holy guys up on a mountain or something. Okay, another one, Jeremy Schill, 9 years old. His dad's working in the garage. He has this car up on 4 jacks, which is probably never good advice to anybody, but he has this car up on 4 jacks, weighs 4,800 pounds. His father's underneath it, working on the transmission. The car starts to move, and it falls on him, off the jacks, on his chest, can't breathe. The 9-year-old, Jeremy, who weighs 65 pounds, goes over to the front of the car and lifts it up enough so his father can breathe. He's 9 years old, 65 pounds, no human growth hormone, no steroids, never lifted a weight in his life, and he's picking up a car that the biggest guy in the NFL couldn't budge. Now you say to me, Bill, but that's an emergency situation. There must have been adrenaline flowing. Well, sure, I'm sure there was adrenaline flowing. But the point is, a 9-year-old who weighs 65 pounds just lifted up the front end of a 4,800-pound car. There's got to be something going on there. And they said, well, yeah, but that's an emergency situation. I said, okay, how about Bob Beamon, 1968 Olympics? Breaks the world record in the long jump by almost 2 feet. Up to that time, it had only been broken, I think, 8 times, and it was by 2 inches each time. He broke it by almost 24 inches. It was, I think, 22 inches. People say, well, but again, he's a world-class athlete, There's a guy by the name of Herbert Nietzsche, I think is his name, a free diver. These guys that go, can dive with no oxygen, takes the breaths and so forth. 860 feet. I don't know about you. I go to the bottom of a 10-foot pool, I feel like my head's going to explode, okay? 860 feet. He held his breath for 9 minutes. Now again, you say, oh yeah, but Bill, these are like world-class athletes. They're trained and so forth. I'm like, okay, so you're not a holy person on a mountain. You're not in an emergency situation. You're not a world-class athlete. So do they still really happen? And I'll give you an example. My son Joseph, we lived up in Hershey, Pennsylvania. I'm in the garage. On the wall of our garage is this pegboard, like the holes in it where you can hang stuff on it. And I'm vacuuming the inside of the car, and I look over, and there is Joseph staring at the wall. I'm like, what's he doing? Something wrong with him. He's a young guy. He's only 3 years old or something. He's staring at the wall, and suddenly I see in his hand he has a painter's paintbrush, and he's staring at the wall, and suddenly I see him lift his hand up and he throws it at the wall. It spins through the air and it sticks in one of the holes. I'm like, I come out of the car, Joseph, how'd you do that? He's 3 years old. He has no idea how he did that, right? Now, I'm stupid, Dad. I go over. I'm thinking, no, maybe this always happens. First of all, I can hardly get it out of the hole. It's wedged in this thing. Okay, I'm talking about a little paintbrush, a little tiny hole. I pull it out, right? So I throw it against the wall about 10 times. It's not even close, right? I get up there like a spear, and I'm trying to put it in that hole. I cannot get it to go in that hole. And I'm thinking, geez, it's possible. He did it. That night they're having dinner. One of the kids is eating a popsicle. Drops on the table, boom, stands up on its side. I said, okay, enough's enough, for one day. Here's Dad dropping that thing 100 times. Because I'm thinking maybe it happens, like every 100, 150 times, like that. It didn't happen for me. Try it next time you're having a popsicle. But these happen. And part of it is, how did peak performance happen? And I'm going to show you a couple things that maybe relate to this, even though you may not all be competing at this point. I'm still going to show you some things. Maybe you have some children or grandchildren who will benefit from your wisdom when you share it with them. The first thing is, I go back to the 100% of the task at hand. Let's take an example. It's a basketball game. Let's make it exciting. There's 20 seconds left in the game. You're down by 1 point. You've just been fouled, and you're about to go to the free throw line, okay? Now, you have 100% to give. And you're going to walk towards that line, and you're committed that you're going to do the best you can on these free throws. And let's just look at it for a second. To make a free throw, what is it that you need to do or want to do? Okay. First thing is, you got to be able to see the rim in detail, and you got to be able to feel your body move. You do those two things, that's as good as it gets right now in this minute. So if you put the whole 100% into seeing the rim, feeling your body, that's as good as it gets. But as you're walking towards the line, the coach is yelling out some instruction you're supposed to do after the first free throw. Does that have anything to do with seeing the rim, feeling your body? No, take away 10% for that thought. As you get towards the line, his mom and dad are up there with the camera, the video camera, and everybody's like filming, and they're all waving like mad and yelling out your name. Does that have anything to do with seeing the rim, feeling your body? No, take away 20% for that thought. As you get up to the line, the opponent's standing right there, and he's trash talking to you, telling you what a lousy player you are, and you don't look like you can reach the rim. Does that have anything to do with seeing the rim, feeling your body? No, take away 10% for that thought. Maybe the last time you were at the free throw line, you missed most of your free throws. Ooh, take away 25% for that thought. Now, you are convinced you're standing here going to give your 100% to seeing the rim, feeling your body. You have about 15% left. That you're actually focused on the two things that would actually help you put the ball in the basket. Which means there's a really great chance you're going to miss. Because you have hardly anything put on what it is that you're trying to do. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. I need a detail. I just want to pick something that most of you can see from where you are. So I'm going to take this crown. Can everybody look at me just a second? You see this crown? I know maybe back there it's going to be a stretch, but can you see that there's actually an etching on the inside metal You see the peak standing up on the top of the crown. There's an etching right in the middle of it. Can you make that out? Now let me just ask you, were any of you just thinking about lunch today? Were you thinking about work? For a fraction of a second, every single one of you is like, what the heck is he talking about? I can only see the crown, you know? My point is, that is called focus. Focus is attention to detail. The more that you look at something and study something, the more absorbed you become in it, and that's when you hear people say, I was in the zone. It's attention to detail. If anybody plays golf, how many golf balls have you looked at in your life? Probably a lot of them. After a while, it's a white fuzzy thing. You stop seeing the details on it. So it's the discipline of trying to see the detail. And you may have said to me in the back, I can't even come close to seeing the etching in the middle of that crown. The fact that you were trying gets you absorbed. Just that you're trying to see the details keeps you absorbed. That is part of the secret of peak performance. I'm going to ask you all right now to snap your finger one time fast for me when I say go. As fast as you can. Ready? Go. Okay. Now, it's late, it's a long night, I'm making it longer for you, I'm sorry. But what I want you to do is as fast as you can, when I say go, I want you to snap your finger. Ready? Go. Okay. A fraction faster, but maybe you're listening for the whole go to come out. When you hear the G sound, I want you to snap your finger. Ready? Go. Okay, now would you admit, because I don't like to be the one telling you, would you all admit that that was way faster than the first time? Didn't I ask you the first time to snap your finger as fast as you could? Why didn't you snap it that fast the first time? Some of you will say to me, well, I didn't know I could snap my finger that fast, you know, or I didn't know you meant really that fast. My point is, that's what you have in you. That's what you're capable of. But again, we tend not to tap into it. We tend to go with what we assume we can do. I know time-wise here, am I doing okay? Like a couple more minutes before you all die? I'll jump ahead here. Going back just to the peak performances, the perfection of the present moment is really an important part of not only peak performance, but of life. I've never put these two things together, but the first thing I put together for you is this. All of time is present to God. He has no past, he has no future. So to the degree we remain in the present moment is the degree to which we remain in perfect union with God. When we ruminate about the past or we get anxious about the future, we've left this present moment, and so we've left him. So I never put this together with sports performance before. I just told you when you're focused and playing, you have 100% to give. If you put the whole 100% on the things that you're doing, that's as good as it gets. Being in the present moment when you're performing, whether it's in athletics or music or anything else you're involved with, is how you perform at the highest level. It's also how you remain in union with God. And so this being in this present moment is really a profound way of living your life. There's a Father Walter Chiswick who wrote a book called He Leadeth Me. And I won't go through it here, but he was in Siberian prisons, hard labor. I mean, every paragraph you're wondering, how did he live through this paragraph? And at the end of all of this, he said, here's what I have to tell you. It's very simple. He goes, this moment is perfect. This moment is God's will. And this came from somebody who's tortured for like 23 years in the Soviet Union. It's the perfection of the present moment in what we're doing. And in today's world, it's probably all the more important for us, given our schedules and the business of our lives, to be in this present moment and to be with God in it. The last things I'll finish up here is, the last part is playing with the passion that never ends. And when we talk about all these things, this peak performance and playing at a certain level, they require a sacrifice. They require giving up something that you could have kept for yourself. And I'll just give you this example. Let's say right now, I want you to imagine somebody that you would die for in your life, somebody that you love so much that you would die for them, okay? And they're up on this podium. I don't know how it happens, but the podium bursts into flames. Are you going to come up here and grab this person off? I'm not feeling really good right now if I'm this person up here on the podium. Are you going to come up here and grab this person off the podium? Yes. Okay, good. Now when you do it, I'm telling you, you're going to get burned right down to the bones in your wrist. Are you still going to do it? Yes. Not as enthusiastic as the first yes, okay? But I trust that you're all going to do it, right? Now I pull out a flamethrower. I burn your wrist right down to the bone. You're going to go nuts. You're going to roll on the ground, attack me, run outside, do something. Same burn, same pain. One you can take, one you can't take. Pain without a purpose is intolerable to human beings. So the question we have for ourselves, and where I'll conclude tonight, is what is a strong enough purpose? And I'm now really getting worried. I'll probably break into a sweat because I have the head of a seminary here listening to my 3 clues about life. So they may not be as theologically sound as he may like, but he'll let me know afterwards. Okay. First clue is God exists. Okay, I don't think I have an argument in the room, but even the New York Times, I think, did a survey and found that 98% of people believe in a higher being of some kind. But if God exists, then there automatically must be some relationship between us and God. Okay, whether we do anything about it or not isn't even the issue. God exists. If He exists, He exists. Whether I do anything about it or not, He doesn't stop existing because I don't act on it. Second clue is I've only been given one thing. You've only been given one thing. Everything else can be taken away from you. Your health, your spouse, your children, your home, your car, your legs, boom, can be gone in a fraction of a second. The only thing you are left with is how you're going to deal with it. You've been given free will for a reason. And I used to wonder why. Now, if I told you in a moment somebody's going to walk into this room and I'm paying them $5,000 a day to say they love you, and they walk into the room and they look at you in the eye and they say, I love you. You're like, right. I know you're getting paid $5,000 a day to say that, okay? So maybe it doesn't mean anything to you. He's compelled by the money. Again, I don't know how this happens, but God walks into this room right now. Anybody going to leave this room? I don't know anybody's going to leave the room. God says, do you love me? What are you going to say? Yes. I've heard somebody say to me, what about the atheist? I said, the atheist thing's over. God's in the room. I mean, even the atheist at this point is going to say yes. Maybe a little sheepishly, but he's going to say yes at this point, okay? So you know what? The lesson here is God does not want us to be a robot or a zombie. He wants us to come to Him and to freely choose Him. And so in order to have true love in life, you have to have free will. You have to be able to choose to love. The third clue, I hate to be morbid here, I'll try not to be, but we're all going to die. Now, at least I'm with a group of hopefully peers here that when I ask you how long you're going to live, I won't be like at a high school where they yell out 35, because that means I'm already gone. How long are you going to live? Give me a number.
90.
90? Do I hear 95? 100? We'll be positive. I'll pick 100, okay? Now, I'm sorry to do this to you. Don't say anything to anybody else. In your mind, I want you to imagine the worst possible thing you can imagine. I'm sorry. Just get something in your mind. Sorry. Now, with a movement of your hand, show me a second. Go ahead. Second. Go. Show me half a second. Show me 100th of a second. Show me 1,000th of a second. Show me 1,000,000th of a second. I like that some of you are still trying. Okay? Let's make it ridiculous. Let's make it 1,000,000th of a second. If that pain you just imagined would come, you tried, didn't you? If that pain would come and go in 1,000,000th of a second, and there'd be absolutely no after effect at all, could you take it? You wouldn't even know you had it. Now let's go back to the 100 years for a second. You said you might live to 100. In relation to eternity, in relation to all of time, how long is 100 years? Faster than 1,000,000th of a second. And you just told me you could take the worst pain in the world for 1,000,000th of a second. It's your life. And God has put us down here in His mercy for the shortest period of time, and He's just asking one question. Do you love me? And of course, we complain about the parking space today. Today was so long, and this didn't go the way I wanted, and the coffee fell on me, or this happened, or whatever, all these things. We're like crazy people. He's put us here for like this fraction of a second, and He's asking you, do you love me? And of course, we can all give the lip service and say yes, but I don't know about you, the way you ultimately know people is by what they do. You hope their words match what they do, but in the end, you're going to know them because you're going to watch them, live with them, and you're going to know this is who they really are. And so God puts us all down in different places. He gives us opportunity for sacrifice. And when we take that sacrifice on gladly and we say yes, that's us saying yes to Him, that I love you. When we refuse the sacrifice, say, I don't want anything to do with it, it's too hard, I don't want to deal with it, we're basically saying no to Him. And so in our lives, that's the challenge that we all have, is to continually give our fiat like the Blessed Mother did, is to continually give our yes in this fraction of a second that we're put here. And the last thing I'll share with you is my favorite quote on sport. It goes like this: sport, properly directed, develops character, makes a man courageous, a generous loser, and a gracious victor. It refines the senses, gives intellectual penetration, and steels the will to endurance. It is not merely a physical development then. Sport, rightly understood, is an occupation of the whole man. And while perfecting the body as an instrument of the mind, it also makes the mind itself a more refined instrument for the search and communication of truth, and helps man to achieve that end to which all others must be subservient, the service and praise of his Creator. That is by Pope Pius XII, written in 1945, called Sport at the Service of the Spirit. And to me, that is the epitome of a mission statement for all of athletics, certainly every Catholic athletic program. It takes sport from its generic level and raises it to the very highest one, and brings us back full circle to the value of play. It's a way of praising our Creator. So with that, I'm going to stop. There are some books over there. I'm not even selling those books. If you want them, I'm happy to sign them. Anything that ever came from that book was going to Belmont Abbey. At some point, if you want to help Belmont Abbey, that would be great. But I appreciate your patience and forbearance that you lasted that long. So thank you all. God bless you.